Hello, I'm Ian Gerson, and this is my show Tremble at Art League Houston. I have a series of sculptures here that are woven mostly using found materials. I use a lot of ropes that I find around Galveston Bay, washed up on the shoreline, and going to towns along the ship channel. And I use those to create weavings along with dried plants, clothing scraps, and emergency blankets, mylar emergency blankets, and other materials that I find in the ground. So it's really, I use a lot, almost exclusively found and discarded materials that speak specifically to this location because they're found, because of where they're found. Often the ropes are come off of boats that are coming in and out of the ship channel or fishing along the shore. The work to me speaks about the environment, climate injustices, and I think those origins of the materials are connected to processes of extraction, like the ships connected to oil and gas and fishing as well. And then I'm also like cleaning the shores in a way too by removing this material. Often the work incorporates text, and it can sometimes be difficult to read, and intentionally playing with legibility as a metaphor for identity, like a survival strategy for identity, and as well as it kind of slows the viewer down to take a little bit longer with the piece to decipher what it says, and kind of pushes back on the idea that something would be like immediately available to everybody at all times. And the process of weaving, I kind of stumbled upon it somewhat organically. I was finding these materials and it just seemed like it made sense as a way to put them together because they were ropes and long pieces of fiber. Weaving is interesting. You don't need a third material to bind the two different strands. It's just a lot of knotting and over and under. I intentionally make them, they're not fully completed in a way, or like there's a lot of open space. So they have kind of a flimsy and precarious nature to them. They stretch over time. They have kind of a relationship to bodies, sagging over time, and the surface of them themselves, the text can be seen as almost like a tattoo or scarring. There's all these materials maybe piercing. Yeah, so one of the main themes of the work is asking, a driving question would be, how can a trans experience be looked to as a model for how we might survive in climate and social precarity? So I'm thinking about like, along those lines, like things like adaptability, resilience, interconnected networks, support networks, collectivity, non-binary thinking, non-linear thinking. How can these be used? How can a lived experience be looked to as to offer these different ways of seeing our world and surviving in our world? So it kind of goes back also to like the pieces being intentionally flimsy and precarious and moving, and they're not rigid. They're more, they flow, they move over time, they move in space. So kind of that ability to shift and adapt. Some of the materials also have a relationship to nightlife, specifically queer nightlife has been really formative for me, and I'm interested in that as a place, a space for becoming or the creation of identity. I definitely idealize that space, and I kind of think about that as like, as almost having a relationship to a utopia, and there's definitely like a projection of an ideal space onto that, which in reality is not maybe, it's not a utopia, but I'm interested in that as like, as something to see in the future, but to keep us going. And it's kind of like, yeah, in a way, a metaphor for just something better or another place. So I use some visual, what I relate to having a relationship to nightlife. So these archways that kind of are a threshold space in between, an entry space, and the shiny material, the mylar, kind of has a reference to disco balls or to party decorations, which is an interesting material because it's used both in situations of where like warmth is needed. There are emergency blankets for warmth, so these disaster situations, as well as like the material also is used as a reflective, shiny party material. So there's that kind of push and pull there that I find an interest in, as well as the bright orange construction netting has kind of that as well. It's the mesh quality looks almost like a club wear, and it's also used in construction sites for safety or to alert somebody of something. So there's a little, I'm interested in like this relationship between visibility or high visibility and safety and protection, especially as it relates to queerness and transness. There are some wearable pieces over here, which kind of imply a performative element. That's something that I'm thinking about doing in the future with those. And then I often work with small sketches which feed into the larger pieces, so that it's kind of a way to plan out the compositions, but there is some improvisation and some working from intuition a little bit as I'm creating the works themselves. On either side here, on either wall, these two pieces are called looms. They reference the way that I make the work itself. I work with 2x4s on the wall with screws in them, and then pulling the ropes across those. Sometimes it's across a flat plane, or sometimes it's like this, where they kind of they bend in space, and then I'll weave materials inside of that. So this materials are not woven into this, but it has a reference to that loom, and there's definitely a lot of shadow play here, and how there's almost like a doubling another piece on the wall. The two pieces in the middle here are one of them in the front incorporates text and definitely plays with legibility, and is probably the text is probably not legible to anybody but me because it's so fragmented, and again, that's intentional to get a glimpse of a text but maybe not be completely in the know about what it means. The piece behind it is called Mutual Mutations. That's actually the text that's on it. I often don't like to reveal what the text is, but the title of that one reveals it. And yeah, I feel like I've been playing with the weavings having kind of more of a light quality, lightness to them, and not being too filled in or too dense, so that there's that one is also kind of adorned and wearing jewelry, found Mardi Gras beads from Galveston. I guess part of the mutual mutations idea is that's also a quote from Glissant, which is the title of the show is taken from as well. But it was thinking about how relation and how when different people or cultures are in relation with each other, there's kind of like a mutual mutation where both shift or kind of become a hybrid. I think these pieces themselves are hybridized objects. There's such a variety of disparate materials working together. There's kind of like a nod to collectivity because the weavings kind of, they end up relying on every strand ends up relying on every other strand for support. And the mutual mutations idea also, I think about transness, the things that excite me about that within my own identity have to do with spaces of in-between. So it's not so much about like moving from one gender to the other as fast as possible, but kind of that in-between space. And yeah, that the mutation there is kind of references the shifting quality that I find as part of my ideas around transness, both as a lived identity and also kind of as a conceptual thought. So yeah, thank you very much.